Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the Avexia webinar series. Our topic for today is From Chaos to Calm, Aligning Your Life for Optimal Well-Being. My name is Christopher Chu. I am the Director of Marketing for Avexia Diagnostics and will be your host for this webinar. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of being joined by an exciting guest, Emmalee Thompson, who will be our presenter for this webinar. Emmalee is a registered nurse turned holistic practitioner. She owns a remote practice where she focuses primarily on serving women of childbearing age, highlighting the importance of fertility and refining what health should look like among young women. Emmalee is also the creator of Integrative Metabolic Wellness Academy, a certification program for nurses desiring to lead the sick care system for a fulfilling career in holistic wellness, where she teaches metabolically focused nutrition, supplementation, and functional lab interpretation. Within IMW Academy, she also trains her students on her unique form of wellness coaching, alignment coaching, which involves assessing a client's often overlooked lifestyle factors that could be contributing to the states of disease. Emmalee lives along the Emerald Coast of Florida with her husband, 2 children, and 2 dogs, where they spend much of their time in the ocean, on the beach, and pursuing their dream life. Without further delay, I will now turn the webinar over to Emmalee.
I'm super excited to be sharing all of this information with you because this is a topic that I am so incredibly passionate about as a practitioner. So we're going to call this From Chaos to Calm, Aligning Your Life for Optimal Well-Being. So really quick intro, and then I really want to get into it because I know we don't have a ton of time. My name is Emmalee Thompson. I'm a registered nurse. I left the hospital finally in 2021. I started taking clients about a year before, and so I've been doing client work for pretty much full time for about 4 years. I did complete the functional diagnostic nutrition certification program, so I am an FDNP. I am the founder and creator of Integrative Metabolic Wellness, which is a certification program specifically for nurses looking to leave their hospital job and really incorporate like an integrative approach and see clients remotely and start their own practice like I have. And within that program, I utilize and I teach on functional labs like the GI map, the Dutch functional analysis of blood work, and HTMA. So I love what I do from a client perspective, from an education perspective. It's really all that I think about in my life. So today we're really going to talk about what I consider to be the missing piece in the wellness industry. And I have been in the wellness space, in the holistic wellness space for about a decade now, just due to my own personal healing journey. And it took me about 8 years to recognize, 8 years of being very involved in the space and a little over 2 years of client work to realize that there was this massive, just glaring empty space, empty hole that was not being talked about. And it took me realizing that with my own clients, not even in my own life, but seeing them kind of continue coming back to this place over and over again and realize that there was this huge missing piece that no one was talking about. So before I tell you what that missing piece is, if you are a practitioner watching this, how often do you hear from your clients, I'm doing all the right things? Or maybe you've even read through their intake form and they truly do seem to be doing everything right. Now, if you're not a practitioner and you happen to be watching this, there will be so much good information in here for you too. But I was running into this all the time. And just for some context here, my primary demographic is women of childbearing age who are struggling with infertility or hormonal dysregulation, painful periods, things like that. But because of the way that I market myself and my services, 95% of the women who are coming to me for help already are very well versed in the holistic wellness space. They're already doing 90% of the diet stuff that I would tell them to do correctly. They're taking like whole food bioavailable supplements that I would recommend to them. And they're getting sunlight and they're exercising and they're doing all the things, right? Like all the right things. And yet they're still having pretty major symptoms. Usually in the case of my clients, maybe they still have pretty major endometriosis going on, or they've been trying to get pregnant for a couple of years and it's just not happening. They're not ovulating consistently, whatever the case may be. And then they come to me and I run labs on them and I'm like thinking that their labs are going to be great because they look perfect on paper and they have like major estrogen dominance or like exhaustive level of HPA axis dysfunction. Their minerals are incredibly depleted. Like they're just falling apart from a lab perspective, but they truly are doing all of the right things. So I kept running into this over and over and over again, and I just couldn't figure out why. And finally, through a lot of just work, I figured out what it was. It's what I call lifestyle health. And this is something that is so often overlooked. So when I say lifestyle health, what I'm referring to are things like daily rhythms, self-care, laughter, love, joy, gratitude, things that directly and majorly impact the way that we perceive ourselves, the way that we perceive the world, and the way that our nervous system responds. And it has, I mean, so much more than mental health implications. We're talking physical health implications, hormonal implications, gut implications by not addressing these areas. So I'm going to kind of just run through these one by one, and I'm going to talk about a little bit more about what I mean. And some of this might seem obvious to you, but I'm telling you, it's most people are not considering these things. So the first thing that I want to talk about is daily rhythms, because this is actually where I started. I kind of started in this order with my clients. So I began evaluating what my clients' daily rhythms looked like. Do you have a morning routine? Do you have an evening routine? Where are your meals eaten? At what time? Are they eaten at the table? Are they eaten in the car? How do you feel when you're eating those meals? How often, like how much are you chewing? Are you breathing deeply before or after eating those meals? I started asking questions like this, and I started recognizing this pattern in the individuals who are doing the most right, like the most right, but who are falling apart the most, who are having the worst symptoms, who are having the most severe lab abnormalities, and recognizing that these people were always on the go, always rushing. And many of them didn't really have any kind of routine. It was just fly by the seat of your pants and survive. So I started evaluating this, and I started discussing something called decision fatigue with them, especially for the ones who seem to not have it really any care in the world about routines, about the importance of having certain things that just happen every day that you don't have to make a decision about. Because the more that we make decisions, the more that we become fatigued by making decisions. And even if those decisions are micro decisions in the moment, they still build up on our subconscious as decisions that we're having to make over and over again. And it can be very paralyzing when it comes time to make an actual major decision, because you've already been required to make 10,000 decisions that day. So we started to discuss things like decision fatigue and how that was impacting how easily they were able to fulfill the protocols that we created or follow the protocols that we had created together. And then also I wanted to just touch on, because I know some people are hearing this and they're thinking like, well, I'm not a routine person, or a lot of my clients are, maybe they work from home or they're like very flexible. They don't like routines. And I absolutely ran into this. And that's why I started really differentiating between like rituals, rhythms, and routines. So a ritual is something that has kind of like a methodical nature to it. And we do rituals every day, all the time. They're very specific to locations and smells and certain activities, and they become part of our lives without much thought. So like if you check the mail, you usually check it the same way every day. You drive the same route to work, you sit in the same place in church, you just do these things over and over again without thought. And I started asking my clients, like, what would it look like if you just recognize the areas of your life that are on autopilot, and maybe started thinking like, is this actually a helpful ritual for me? Or is this something that I could do a little bit differently to make my life a little bit easier? So that's where, when I say rituals, that's what I'm referring to. Then when I say routines and rhythms, routines are what people think of usually when they're thinking of like consistency. It's something that happens usually in a very specific way. It's a task that needs to be done. And you can use things like habit stackings and lists and charts and phone reminders and bullet journals and all kinds of things to track routines. But for some people, some of my clients tend to be a bit resistant to the idea of routines, especially if they have small children. Maybe things can't consistently be done the same way every day. And that's completely fine. As a mom of young children myself, I totally relate to that. And that's where we can discuss the importance of rhythms. So as opposed to routines, rhythms are something that are a bit more relaxed. They're patterns that we follow that are flexible and they can change. So it can look like steps that we take in a day, but without specific time restraints or specific things that maybe doesn't have to be done a specific way, but it still needs to be done. And there's just some type of rhythm to it. So this is the first thing that I started implementing. And my client satisfaction and my client compliance, which I really hate that word compliance, but for lack of a better term, client compliance began to significantly improve. They felt like they were able to implement what I was teaching them because they had this like better understanding of the way that they were behaving on a day-to-day basis and why. And things like supplements and diet changes and habits became a lot easier. They weren't as daunting. So this was the first big, like, my first step into this idea of lifestyle coaching alongside nutrition and health coaching. The next thing that I really started evaluating was self-care. Now, self-care has kind of become like a hot topic, I feel like, in the last few years. And I feel like it's not really super well understood, but when I say self-care, I'm really talking especially for my demographic, who is, women of childbearing age or mothers. I really started discussing with them the importance of actually putting themselves first and reminding them that if you are not taking care of yourself first, you cannot take care of the people in your lives the way that they need to be cared for, the way that they need to be taken care of. And even though that feels so obvious to so many of us, I do fully believe that it helps to hear that kind of information from someone who you view to be in a position of authority, someone whose opinions that you respect, someone whose thoughts that you respect. So I started really reminding reminding my clients of this, in that you do have to care for yourself first. And if you do see clients with children a lot, I also think it can be really helpful to remind your clients that kids learn from their parents. So what kind of behavior do you want to model? Do you want your children putting off their own needs for as long as possible until their bodies are screaming at them to do something differently? The next thing that I really got into was laughter. This is so obvious, but it's not talked about. So truly, laughter is the best medicine. It boosts the immune system. It relaxes the whole body. It triggers the release of endorphins. It shifts perspective. It can even help you to live longer. And I now ask my clients, how often are you laughing every day? Are you laughing every day? Do you even laugh every day? And if not, like, let's talk about why. Let's talk about why you're not laughing. Does laughter feel like something that you can't even do anymore? Are you taking the world a little too seriously? These things matter because laughter has the ability to reset that nervous system, and your nervous system is literally how your body responds every single day. So just having the ability to easily reset that nervous system for free every day is vital to seeing lasting change. The next topic was love. And this can be something that's really hard to discuss with people because then we kind of start getting into this idea of like relationships and how are your relationships working? And I'm not a therapist, I'm not a relationship expert, I'm not anything like that. But I do think that love is a vital part of your mental and your physical health because we know that the feelings of romantic love are associated with oxytocin. They do change the brain's chemistry. And in changing the brain's chemistry, again, they have the ability to reset the nervous system. And when we reset the nervous system, we truly change the way that our body perceives and responds to the world around us. We change how difficult it feels to implement new habits. We change how we perceive the people around us, whether we're living in victim mode or we're living in, taking ownership of our decisions and our responsibilities. So having some kind of love in your life is vital. And I began talking to my clients about this as well. The next, and maybe the most important thing, and when I got to this point, oh my gosh, my clients just, it was such a tangible change across the board. And I don't even work with tons of clients. I really only work with, a few at a time. But just seeing the change that happened when I started implementing this was incredible. So joy and gratitude. I began helping my clients learn how to romanticize their life. When I say that, I mean recognizing that their life is special and magical because they believe it's special and magical. And you see what you look for, right? So if you're looking for the special, you're looking for the magical, you're looking for the beauty, you begin to see those things and your life changes before your eyes. And this is especially helpful for clients who live a really high stress life and have really poor stress tolerance. But then it became this thing like, we can talk about this back and forth, but how do we actually help you make those changes in your brain? How do you begin to notice? So I actually started requiring my clients to keep a gratitude journal every day. It's a really quick, just 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening, but keeping a gratitude journal can literally train your brain to notice the beauty in the day-to-day. And practicing gratitude boosts serotonin and activates the brainstem to produce dopamine. And because I use the Dutch test and I use the organic acids test that's a part of that, I know that a ton of my clients are very low on dopamine. And the best way to improve dopamine, other than movement and exercise, is by practicing gratitude. And the hormonal cascade is even so much more complex than we know today. Even though we've learned a lot, there's just always so much that we don't know. But we do know that when you start to make those small changes, we see so many downstream effects in the hormonal cascade of how our body, again, is responding, how it's perceiving stress. We're moving, and our brain is working in a completely different way. So this is true nervous system regulation. And I suppose maybe I should have called this nervous system regulation, because it really is what it all goes back to, is having a regulated nervous system so that you're able to make changes that, number one, don't feel impossible. It's not like pulling teeth, but also number two, you want to make, because your body is showing up differently. Okay, so then before we wrap this up, I also wanted to just kind of leave you with something tangible that I began using for my clients. So kind of going back to that, like, routines, rituals, rhythms that we talked about in the very beginning. Aside from like keeping a gratitude journal and stuff like this is something that I began using with my clients when we're doing like some of our initial intake, maybe not the very first intake, but we're in a second call and we're wanting to go over a little bit more details with their life. And they're usually a little bit surprised, not always, because a lot of them know that I practice a little bit differently. I do things a little bit differently. It's not all going to be about your nutrition, and it's not all going to be about your supplements and your labs. We're also going to talk about some hard things like your life and your daily decisions and your mindset and all of those kinds of things. But when we talk about those things, usually this is what I ask of them. So especially if I ever hear the words out of their mouth, there just isn't enough time in the day, we do a task or habit inventory. So I have clients spend 1 to 2 days writing down every single thing they do. And when I say every single thing, I mean like wake up, put your feet on the ground, go pee, brush your teeth, put your clothes on, cook breakfast, but make coffee, like what every single thing that they do, I have them write down. And it's a long list. Ideally, they would do this evaluation in the moment, but that's not always realistic if they're super on the go. So the goal here is to ask, how does this activity impact my energy? Is it a positive impact? Is it a negative impact? Or is it a neutral impact? So for positive, they would just write a little plus sign beside it. For negative, they would write a little, minus sign. And then for neutral, it's a little equal sign. So for positive, that means this activity, this task, this habit fills up my cup. It either brings me joy, it makes me feel relaxed, it makes me smile, it makes me laugh. So maybe just the act of making coffee every morning fills someone's cup up. Maybe it's kind of therapeutic to like mix up their coffee. For myself, I love making coffee. I add half and half, and I add collagen, and I add shilajit. Like, it's this whole process for me that feels very nourishing, not just to my body, but it feels nourishing to my soul. So for me, that's a very like filling activity. For someone else, maybe it's a draining activity. Maybe they don't need to be spending their time making coffee every morning. Draining would be something that you're doing that is just sucking you dry. So again, using myself as an example, draining for me is answering emails that are not client emails. So random inquiry emails or scheduling emails, those kinds of emails, just, I don't know what it is about them, but they chip away at my daily energy. So you can't always get rid of those things. Obviously, I can't just ignore emails. Emails do have to be answered, but I'll give an example of how I handle that. So, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Neutral would be like brushing my teeth. Do I feel like brushing my teeth just gives me life every day? No, not really. But also, it's not sucking me dry. It's just something that has to be done. So that would be an example of something neutral. Ideally, we would have more positives than negatives. That would be ideal. But most of the time, people end up with a lot of negatives and just a few positives. So the goal is to either change those activities that are draining to be something that can fill your cup, and this is going to be very individualized per person, or get rid of them. Maybe it's not even something you have to do. Do you have to go check the mail every day? If that's draining to you, can you check it once a week? Like, maybe we can put it off a little bit, or delegate it to someone else who can do it just as well as you, and it doesn't have to be coming from you. So in the example that I gave of my activity that drains me, emails, I delegated those to an assistant, and now I don't answer them, and they still get answered, but it's not by me, and it's one less thing that drains me. Now, this exercise is originally from the book Atomic Habits. Tremendously recommend. I actually advise my clients read it if they want a little bit more, but this is something that you can take and use with yourself or with your clients to really start implementing that lifestyle evaluation alongside diet evaluation. So last slide, I just want to stress, implementing lifestyle coaching alongside nutrition and wellness coaching is a game changer in every single way, because it feels like when I used to just do nutrition and diet coaching and supplements and labs, it felt like I was giving my clients a huge piece of the puzzle, but it always felt like there was more that I could be doing to help make this like more of an entire life change. And this is it. Talking about these day-to-day habits really truly is just the biggest change, because your client, their ability to follow what you're teaching them, to learn what they're teaching them, their satisfaction, not just with the protocols that you're giving them and building them, but their satisfaction with their own life will skyrocket, and they will thank you for it, and they will send you tons of other people, because everyone needs this kind of help in their life. So thank you so much. There will be a part 2 and a part 3 to this that I'm so excited about, but thank you for attending. I so appreciate it, and I can't wait to talk more.
Thank you, Emmalee, for that informative presentation. Thank you all again for joining us for this webinar event. Until next time, from everyone at Avexia Diagnostics, stay healthy, stay safe, and we wish you all the best on your pathway to wellness.